Hey, welcome to Project Freelance. My name is Kay Anagonio. If we have not met, if you haven't heard my voice through your radio, through your stereo, through your earbuds, your airbuds, your iBuds, your O-buds, whatever buds you got, if you're hearing me through them, hey, what's up? Thanks for checking out my podcast. If you're new, please be sure to subscribe. If you've been around for a minute and you like it, please rate it and give it a review down below. Helps the podcast grow, helps the community grow. It helps me help people like you. So, Season 2. Have you missed any of the previous episodes? Because you need to go check them out. But today is officially episode 1 of Season 2 of Project Freelance. Woo! Yes! I know you're clapping in the background. I didn't want to give you the same podcast you had last season. This season, I wanted to step it up. 2018 is supposed to be big for all of us. So, let me help you and let me help you help your friends. If you dig the podcast, share it. You're probably wondering, how can I help you more than I already have? I hope I've helped you. But the best way to become a master of anything is to learn from the masters before you. And I learned this a couple years ago while editing videos for sports psychologist Brian Kane. In order for me to be able to better teach you, I wanted to get in touch with some masters of their fields, of the industries that they are in. I wanted to bring them on to not only teach you, but I want to learn as well, because I would like to grow and become more successful and follow in their footsteps and skip the mistakes they've made, which is essentially what I want this podcast to do for you. So this first episode, my guest is a singer in a band called Memphis May Fire, and recently he actually created a pomade company. His name is Matty Mullins, and on this episode, we're going to touch on things that have to do with working on labels, getting screwed by labels. We're going to talk about the business side, the financial side, the mental health side of music and the music industry. So a couple years ago, I discovered Memphis May Fire, and since the age of 14, I started singing and screaming. So I have a band called Chasing Satellites, but I was a huge fan and am a huge fan of Memphis May Fire, and I would sing their music and scream all the time. There's covers of me doing their songs on YouTube. I am a fan, through and through, forever. I'm a fan of everything they do, and I support the hell out of them. It's the first episode of the podcast, and this episode is actually sponsored by On Pointe Pomade. And you guys, it's like every teenage dream of mine come true. What? Matty, thank you so much. On Pointe Pomade, thank you guys so much. You can actually go pre-order Matty's new matte pomade, and I'm super excited for it. You guys, it's amazing. Okay, on Warped, let me just be super, super real with you guys right now, because a lot of people do sponsorships with companies because they're like, yeah, I need the money. Cool, let's do this. No, I love Matty's products. Here's the thing. He literally mailed me a box with 4 cartons, tubs, tins, what are they called? Of pomade, right? I went to Zoomies and bought more of his pomade because I support, this guy, he's such a good guy. Okay, well, I'm going to stop talking about him. Go check out onpointpomade.com, get some pomade. You guys can use the discount code Project Freelance. That will get you 15% off. Go check it out, guys. Go pick up some pomade. Do your hair some justice. Trust me. Thank you, Matty. Thank you, On Pointe Pomade. Let's get into this episode. Matty, welcome to the podcast.
It's my pleasure. I'm your number one fan, so anything I can do, I'm happy to do it.
Well, hey, that means a lot to me because I feel the same way, you know? All right, so give the people a brief introduction about you and all of the different things you do, because you do everything from music to business and all kinds of stuff. So tell me what you do and who you are.
Well, my name's Matty Mullins. I'm 29 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been married for a little over 11 years, and I've been the front man for a band called Memphis May Fire for about 10 years. And a few years ago, I started a hair product company called On Pointe Pomade, and it's been a wild ride.
Let me ask you, because it's something that I feel a lot of people don't really understand when they are getting into music and they're wanting to go on tour and things like that. So as someone that's been touring for so long and someone that's also been married for, almost just as long, how do you guys work on your relationship and keep your relationship strong while you're, touring most of the time?
I've tried to always make it a priority, to make sure that my wife always knows that she's my number one. No matter what, if I'm in Germany and she knows that if I'm anywhere in the world and she says, I need you home right now, that I would be there, And there's been times on tour when she's had to have rushed surgeries and things like that, and I have left tours and come home for that. But more so than anything, it's just an emotional support thing, to let your spouse or your significant other know that no matter what's going on out on the road, that they always come first. And, there's a lot of different things that go into building a successful relationship, a successful marriage. But I think that's really key. When you're gone all the time, you have to work really hard at making sure that your spouse knows how valuable they are to you.
Yeah, and I feel like you do a really good job of, when you are home, you guys go out and do things. You don't just sit at home, because I know for me personally, when I get home and I'm just sitting around, I feel like I'm wasting time and I get anxious because I'm so used to being, gone and somewhere new and always moving,
Yeah, and at the same time, I think that it can be tempting for an artist that tours full time when they get home to just relax, to just sit down and try to gather yourself emotionally and mentally, physically, just try to get back to just being a person for a little bit of time that you're at home. So I think that for some artists, it can be challenging to come home and try to just switch the role right into full-time husband or full-time father or full-time anything, Uber driver or whatever it is that anybody does. I think it's tough to get off the road and dive right back in. But I understand what you're saying. For me as well, I never am able to really sit still. I just have to always be moving or progressing in some way. It's just how I was built. It's how I'm wired.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me how you got started in music. Like, what made you want to, pursue it as a career?
Yeah, I was raised in a really musical household. So instead of sporting events, my family went to concerts. It was like a weekly thing for us. And my dad's a musician. My older brother is a musician. I grew up watching him play shows. And my older sister ended up dating a lot of musicians growing up, guys that were in national touring bands and stuff like that. And I would go out and watch them play. And, it was just like an always thing for our family. We were always surrounded by music. And I knew from a really young age that this is what I wanted to do. And I think that there's a lot of people that from a young age, they want to pursue music full time. And, things just don't work out, or, something becomes more important than that. I have to focus on something else. And for me, it was just kind of a series of events that led to being in Memphis May Fire and touring full time. And, it's become a career. It became a career at a young age. I was in a lot of local bands growing up as well. So, I grew up in Spokane, Washington, and, I was always pursuing music for as long as I can remember. I think I performed on stage for the first time when I was 6 years old. I've just never really known anything else. And so I think I've just always pursued it wholeheartedly, not really having a backup plan, not really knowing what I would do otherwise. But I guess these days, if music fell apart, I could always just pursue hair product full time.
There's so much you just said that I would like to go off on so many different tangents. Making it a career and talking about people that, might not make it, for lack of a better term. How do you still trying to motivate your friends that tried to be in music, that it didn't really work out for them, but they're, they still want to do it? Like, what advice would you give to them? Because I feel like a lot of people don't realize how much work actually goes into, pursuing a self-employed type of lifestyle.
Yeah. People don't like this answer. Anybody that pursues music wholeheartedly and full time, they want it to be a job. They want it to pay their bills. So I don't think that people really want this to be what I'm going to say, but I'm going to be honest. I think that if you've tried everything and music didn't work out for you, it's just not in the cards, be really thankful just to have music as a hobby. Be thankful that music exists, even if it's not paying your bills, because the best times in music, the most enjoyable, the most valuable memories I have as an artist are being in the garage with my friends, playing God knows what, sounding awful, and just having the time of our lives. No rules, no regulations, no record label breathing down your neck, no fans telling you that they used to like you better when you sounded this way or that way. It's just like all the things that make music just like any other monotonous job. It doesn't exist when it's just for fun. It doesn't exist when it's just a passion and it's just something that you do because you love it. Just because music isn't paying your bills doesn't mean that it can't be something that you love dearly and that you devote time to. And I hope that it works out for anyone and everyone that tries, but it's not just about talent. It's not just about drive. There's a lot of very talented, very driven people that never quite got their shot. They weren't in the right place at the right time, didn't meet the right people to play with. There's a million things that can cause a music career to not work out. And, I feel really blessed to have had a career that has worked. But I still miss those days of being in the garage jamming with my buddies and playing awful music and just thinking it's the coolest thing in the world. And those are the times I cherish the most.
I love that answer, to be honest. People want that authenticity, and that's why I wanted to, bring people on this podcast like yourself that have been in the industry for years, and you know what it's like to struggle as a musician. So while you were, being brought up in music and you started playing shows, did you have any quote unquote real jobs, like 9-to-5s, to help support yourself while you were pursuing music? Or did you, because you had full support of your parents, was it a little bit different for you?
No, totally. My parents have always been supportive emotionally and in any way they could, but I didn't come from a wealthy family at all. I came from a very lower class family. We grew up in the ghetto, and as much as my parents loved and supported me, they never had the financial means to be able to, fund my career. I had a bunch of jobs. I worked at a movie theater when I was 16, like a dollar theater. It was like basically they were just like replaying movies that you could go rent it at Blockbuster. Amazing. But instead you go pay like a dollar to go watch it at the theater. I worked for Nordstrom selling shoes. I worked at Verizon selling cell phones. I did a bunch of stuff, and it was never easy. When I first joined, so I was playing music my entire childhood, and then when I turned 19 is when I joined Memphis. And even at that point, the band had just signed and we were touring, but when we were home, it's like there was nothing. Like the money that we made on tour was just enough to pay for gas to get to the next show, and the merchandise that we would sell would, go towards ordering more merchandise, and we were just building and building. And so when I came home, the band had a little bit of buzz, but we still weren't making good money. So I went to Hot Topic and I was like, hey, that shirt on the wall right there, that's my band. Would you mind if I worked here and sold your shirts? That is also one of my shirts, and it was this like really crazy dynamic. They're like, what, and kids would come in and be like, yo, you're Matt Mullins from Memphis May Fire. I'm like, yeah, dude. And it's crazy. I think a lot of people don't understand. Like I said at Uber earlier, I've got a bunch of friends that when they get home from tour, they drive Uber, A, to bring in extra money, and B, to not go crazy while you're at home. But yeah, definitely. I'm no stranger to the 9-to-5.
Man, it's amazing to hear that you, as an artist on a record label and just starting out, you were still trying to figure out how to push your band, and you figured out that, hey, Hot Topic sells my shirt. Like, I should go sell my shirt at Hot Topic. Like, what made you think to do that? Obviously because your band was, on a shirt on the wall, but like you could have done so many other things, and this is back before social media was around. So tell me about that. Tell me about pushing your band locally versus now social media, and how that has both been a positive and negative influence on yourself and the band.
Memphis broke just right at the time that social media became the driving force for artists. So we broke it in the MySpace days. And, actually it's funny, the band was, for those that don't know, Memphis was a band for about a year before I joined. They put out an EP, and their singer had gotten his girlfriend pregnant and decided to quit. So they were going to just call it quits. Kellen decided, let's do some vocal auditions. I'll put a instrumental track on MySpace, and anyone that wants to try out can download the song and write vocals to it, record vocals, and send it to him. They got tons and tons and tons of auditions, and he wasn't vibing with any of them. He didn't feel like anyone was the right fit, and was about to give up. I had some friends tell me about this band that was doing open auditions from Dallas, and I was like, I'll give it a shot, I guess. And so I did, and me and Kellen clicked right away, and I flew down to Dallas, and the rest is history. But the point of that was that you had to go to MySpace to download the track to be able to try out, so that, social media has always been an important part of our band's success. But I would say an even bigger part starting out, like you said, was our local success. And being from Dallas, the band had an incredible support system in the Dallas music scene. Coming from Spokane, where we had hardly any music scene and definitely hardly any supporters of it, going to Dallas, where guys like Mike Zemer were throwing shows where 4,000 or 5,000 people would come out, these festivals that he would do at the Plano Center in Plano. And it was like insane. My first show with the band was in front of a few thousand people for a Halloween show. And it was only about 2 weeks after I had moved down to Dallas. And it's crazy. I think that a band really does need a strong local following, unless they want to, write their first song, get in a van and start touring. But that's really hard to do, So our local support system was incredible. That mixed with our ability to interact with fans and spread awareness of our music through social media played a big role in our success.
That's how, most of us found out who you guys were. I mean, I was living overseas at the time when I, first heard Memphis May Fire, and obviously blown away. I knew that I had to take the first chance that I could to, see you guys play. And it is so cool to see how a local scene can really help build a band up. But how do you feel about where the scene has gone now? Do you feel like there's a hindrance, that something's holding it back? Because, events like Warped Tour, 2018 is going to be the last year that Warped Tour runs. So, what do you think that says about the local scene?
I don't know. It's so tough. I don't feel like we've been... I don't feel like we've been really invested into a local scene for the past, 7 years since we started touring really, really full time. A lot of us have lived in different states and, fly in and rehearse and then start a tour. And so I guess I feel kind of disconnected to any specific local scene. So I don't really feel like I have the right to speak to it. Living in Nashville here, there, the music, it's Music City, right? So it's like everything has a great scene, great following here because everyone is a musician. I think my next door neighbor, he mows his lawn in his Zildjian shirt, and I was like, hey, you play drums? He's like, yeah, I toured with all these 80s bands and blah, blah. It's like that everywhere, anybody that you run into on the street will have had some sort of career in music at one point or another. And but outside of that, I don't know. I think that for some cities like Dallas might still be thriving as a local scene. And there might be cities like Spokane, where I grew up, that are still really struggling. I'm not sure what the current state of local scenes are, but, I would love to see, just an explosion in local scene support, and that local bands could get more and more chances to become national bands because their local scene was so supportive.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like because, as bittersweet as it is that Warped Tour is ending, it is such an iconic event. And I feel like with the absence of Warped Tour, I think local bands and local music scenes are going to, try to expand and grow, because that will be, one of their only shots to do that, is to start, hosting festivals in their own cities.
Yeah, that could definitely be the case. I think the music industry is always a guessing game. It's always evolving, and no one really knows what's going to happen. And all we can do as artists is just put our best foot forward and, keep writing music that we're proud of and put it out there for people to support and hope that people will support. That's really all that we can do.
So I don't know how much you can talk about it or want to talk about it, but I would like to hear stories of times you've been screwed over, because I know through a lot of your songs, you've definitely talked about, the industry and how it's affected you and the band.
Without naming names or getting into too many specifics, looking back on it, you're right. I've written a handful of songs about being screwed over and things like that. It's just like the older I get, the more I realize that the world isn't out to get me, right? If I'm in a bad situation, it's because, most likely I made a bad decision along the way. And that's why, I teach these Entertainment Institute classes on Warped Tour, and the class is called Developing Your Band, and such a big part of it is talking about record labels and what it's like to sign your first record deal. And all the times that we were quote unquote getting screwed over was just when we signed a record deal that we thought was pretty and it wasn't. Labels are labels, and there's great people that work at labels, and there's people that aren't so great that work at labels. And but regardless, what a label needs to do to survive and to thrive is to make money. So they're looking for ways, any way possible, that they can make money. That they're going to make money on your record sales. They're going to make money maybe partially on merch sales. They're going to want to make money on your publishing. And as an artist, it's just kind of the thing where you have to take a step back and say, is what I'm signing here actually more of a benefit to me or more of a benefit to them? And this is kind of the age of independent artists, right? Like artists like Macklemore and artists that are doing well independently. I think it's a testimony for people to see, like, hey, I don't necessarily have to have a label. Some of the good things about signing to a label is that their following becomes your following to an extent. When we signed to Rise and started putting out music videos for our album, The Hollow, they were getting millions of views because Rise's YouTube channel has millions of subscribers, so the exposure there was really amazing. But at the same time, we've always tried to be, since our very first record deal, which was with a different record label, we've always tried to be really careful about what we're signing. Holding on to your publishing and owning the rights to your own music is really valuable, because if your music gets used in movies or video games or whatever, there's a lot of money that gets made behind the scenes there. And if you own your publishing, then you're one of the people that gets to profit from that, to benefit from that. And as artists, it's so important to look out for ways, any and every way that you can bring in money, because as an artist, you can bring in a ton of money, but then to succeed as an artist, you have to put most of that money back into your craft, whether that means merchandise or equipment or your form of travel. For a band to operate at the level that we operate at, we have to have a large crew. We have guitar tech, drum tech, bass tech, merch guy, all these people that work for us that help us maintain the level that we're at. And for that, we need a larger form of transportation. And so when you tour in a bus, it's insanely expensive. And so, we have to bring a whole lot of money in just to sustain, just to oftentimes break even, let alone, make a little bit of money to have a life outside of, just living on a bus and eating off of the rider and things like that. So, just be really careful. I think it can be so exciting to get your first record deal. Like, you're like, all right, this is my shot. This is my one chance to succeed. And you get so caught up in that you just sign the dotted line without reading the fine print. So what I try to recommend to anybody is get a great lawyer. Lawyers are expensive, but signing away 10 years of your life to a deal that you didn't understand is more expensive. Get someone that really understands the contract, that can look over it and say, this looks great, but it actually means this, and just know what you're getting into before you get into it. And, these days, by the time you're really valuable enough to a label for them to sign you, you're already valuable to your listeners. You already have a following of people that are paying attention, and I think that in some cases bands really do need a label to jumpstart, but in other cases you might not. So try to just be observant of whether you actually need a deal or not, and if you do sign a deal, to be really careful about what you're signing and how much you're giving away.
Knowing where to get, protection for yourself, especially as a musician starting out, I feel like is, very helpful, not only to musicians, but, anyone across the board. If you're signing any kind of contract with anyone to do business with them, it's super important to know not only who you're dealing with, but what that contract really says or doesn't say. And I feel like a lot of times people, definitely overlook things, as you said.
Yeah, totally. The music industry is just a completely different type of animal from any other industry in the world. And it's like, if you don't know exactly what you're getting yourself into when you sign your first deal, it can really be the difference of whether your band survives or just goes away, If you sign to a label that doesn't really care, that's not very invested, that just sees an opportunity to make a quick buck, and then things don't go that way, and then, you get dropped, and now you're left with all this debt, and it can be a really ugly situation, So just be careful about what you sign, and I could go on about that for days.
Yeah, no, I feel like, a lot of musicians could talk about it for days because it is something that has, unfortunately, affected a lot of artists out there, but I think it's definitely important to talk about it. And I'm curious, how did you overcome the challenges that you have faced within the industry, aside from growing up a little bit and learning some grace and forgiveness, but how did you overcome those challenges?
You just have to realize that staying true to yourself and what you believe in and the vision that you have is really the most important thing. When you set out to play music, if you're on a mission to make a bunch of money or on a mission to hook up with a bunch of girls on the road or guys on the road, whatever, when you have alternative motives other than just making great music and sharing it with the world, I don't think you have much of a chance of success at all, but when you have a vision of something really special, when you're like, listen, this art that I create, it makes me feel something, and I want to offer that to other people because I want it to make them feel the same way. When I'm down and I write a song about hope and it lifts my spirits, I want that song to do that for somebody else. When people look around and see a hopeless world and they feel like life isn't worth living, and there's a song that comes along that reminds them that it is, and it was a song that you had a part in writing, it's like there's no greater feeling in the world than that. And if you have a really pure motive to why you're pursuing music, why this is needs to be your career, I think that there's so much success that can be had and so much joy, and I think that a lot of the BS along the way, whether it be problems with the label or problems on the road or problems with your band members, that stuff's all going to come into play, and you just have to be ready for it. But your goal and your motive has to be bigger than all of that. It has to be worth it, because when everything gets really messy and you start to wonder why you're doing this, you have to look at why you started in the first place. When you're in a bus that costs $80,000 and you put out an album that costs $60,000 and you are playing a show with $15,000 of production, and your band is getting paid $20,000, and then you get home and you have $5, and you're like, wait, what happened? I can't live like this. But you have to remind yourself, why am I actually here? Is it for all the fame and the glory and the money, or is it for something bigger than that? And if your motive is right, if your soul desires what music can provide, then it always is worth it.
Exactly. And let's talk about, something bigger than all of that, because I wanted to obviously talk to you about your faith and how that's come into play when it comes to, writing your music.
Yeah. So my faith is it's the foundation of my entire life. And so naturally, my faith and views on the world and on faith are going to make their way into my music. And, when we were writing, our record Unconditional, I was struggling so much with panic and anxiety and depression, and it was all new to me, and I had no idea where it was coming from, and all I could think about was that. And so I wrote these songs that were about what it's like to have a panic attack, and songs that were what it's like to feel like you're at the bottom of a deep dark hole and you're clawing your way out and you feel like you're never going to get out. And in that season, I was living in Seattle, and my wife and I started going to a new church in Seattle called the City Church, and the pastor there, his name was Judah Smith, and he preached in a way that was so relatable, and it was so on a level that I understood in a whole new way. I've been a believer since I was really young. I came from a Christian household. My dad was a pastor, and my mom, an amazing woman of God as well. But but I was always carrying their faith. It had never quite become my faith, and until I had reached this season where I had hit rock bottom and I was like, what do I believe? Why do I say these things? And I had to figure it out for myself. And going to that church where Judah speaks was a huge part of that, figuring out who I was and who God was in my life in that season. And by the time we had finished writing that record, I had not only been through those experiences and learned so much from them, but also realized that God wasn't making me have anxiety. God wasn't making me depressed. God was, he was allowing those things in my life while he walked through that season of life with me so that I would come out on the other side with a whole new understanding and sympathy and empathy for the people, all the people in the world that struggle with those things, that don't feel like they have a voice to talk about it, or they don't feel like they're seen or heard. And so it was like this really beautiful thing. I think, like every record that we put out, I believe, is always going to be better than our last record because we're always learning, we're always growing. But I think Unconditional is always going to be my favorite Memphis May Fire record because it was this really terrifying season for me of how honest can I be in this record without letting people down? Like when you're in the public eye, you feel like you have to always have it together and you have to be someone that people can always look up to. And I was like, I don't want them to know that I'm falling apart because then they might fall apart too. And I don't want to trigger someone else's crap. And all these thoughts that came through my head that were invalid. And I realized that when I started being honest and when I started being open about these things, it was the first step of healing for so many people hearing this record and being like, oh, he struggles with that too. I'm not alone. I don't have to walk through this alone. I can listen to this music and know that somebody else understands. And, anyways, I think I just made like 15 points off of one question. But yeah, and since then, growing in my faith and growing in my relationship with God has just been this incredible journey of knowing that, life's not easy and it's not always going to be pretty. And especially when you decide to follow Jesus, when you say like, my life looks like this, like I will be a follower of Jesus. I will honor God with the things I do and the music that I write and the things that I say. It doesn't mean that life's going to all of a sudden like get better or be easy. I think that a lot of times it gets harder because people that don't understand it and will hate you for it, or people that, or just, feeling like you're going through things and praying and asking God to take it away and he doesn't take it away. And it just can be this confusing thing, this revolving, confusing thing. But as I grow and as I get older and as I get closer to God, the more I realize that he's walking through every season of that with me and allowing me to learn so many things. And glory to God for that. You know what I mean? Like it's incredible how now a dark season can seem like a learning experience and not just some hopeless thing that I'm falling into. So yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. And I feel like you were saying, that's it for those that aren't Christian or don't have that faith. It goes back to what you were saying about the world is not out to get you. And I feel like a lot of times artists, we forget what our music is. We forget that we're making music for fans, but we do this for us. This is like our therapy. Like we have to do this because it's all we know. I do want to touch, since we are on the topic of mental health, I do want to touch a little bit on how mental health has come into play when you are on tour and how you cope with that. Because, there are kids that are going to listen to this podcast that struggle with mental health, and I myself do. So how do you cope with that when you are, surrounded by your bandmates 23 hours a day? Like the only time you have away from them is at a gas station or, when you try to get away, how do you deal with that mental health?
I think that mental health issues, they feed on fear, and they grow when they're not addressed. And I think that the best thing that we can do about mental health issues is to talk about it, to get it out in the open. So find somebody that's safe. Find somebody that's safe, whether they're on the road with you or whether they're at home, someone that's a phone call away, whatever, and just be honest about it. When you have a crazy thought or when you have a crazy feeling, or you're outside of the realm of peace, like you're not at ease and you feel so trapped, and those things, they can happen so quickly. They can come out of nowhere, and it's so important just to get it out in the open. And I hope that I really hope to see mental health issues and disorders, everything become just as big, if not a bigger topic than physical issues. That people start acknowledging these things as real, because I think if you haven't been through it, it's impossible for you to understand what it's like. So a lot of people that haven't been through it just write it off as cheer up, and it's like, no, you can't just do that. Talk about it with someone, even if it's not someone that understands, even if it's someone that's just lending their ear to hear. Because I think a lot of times when we speak things out, our brain can start connecting the dots. It's when we hold it inside and when we bottle it up that it gets more and more confusing, and we start to try to answer our own questions, and we start to try to solve our own problems, and it just becomes this big mess. I think the best thing you can do is get it out in the open.
Okay, so let's transition, because you do indeed have a hair product. I would like to talk about it. Why did you create this? Why On Pointe Pomade? Where did this idea come from?
Oh my gosh. Well, just like anybody else, when I was younger, go to Great Clips and get a haircut, and come home with a can of American Crew or Murray's or Axe or whatever it was that they had at the grocery store, it was all that I knew. It was what I knew existed, and I got a little bit older and I started getting haircuts at barbershops, real traditional barbershops that really knew what they were doing. It's more so an experience than anything else. You can get a really great haircut, but it's also just part of the trade. I really appreciate the trade.
So before Matty tells his story about On Pointe Pomade and how it came to fruition, I wanted to remind you guys that if you go to onpointepomade.com, you can actually get 15% off of your purchase if you use the code Project Freelance. Again, 15% off. On Pointe Pomade. Matty, I support everything this guy does, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, but if you're looking for some good hair product, honestly, and you don't know who Matty is or who Memphis May Fire is, it doesn't even matter, because this stuff is great. And if you want to go get it in person, you can pick it up at Zoomies. Cool. All right, Matty, tell me more about On Pointe. I have a similar story. I moved to Australia in 2013, and I met someone who was a barber, and I was like, I feel like I want to try that, and as a female, it's obviously a little bit weird to go to a barbershop, but when you get that experience, it's unlike anything else. Like I have such an appreciation for it as well. It's such a beautiful, it's like an art form, it's more than just getting a haircut. It's like, it's a community. It's the cliche barbershop. Like if you watch any of the barbershop movies, it's that.
Totally. It really is. I mean, it's an amazing experience. And I would love to fight that stigma, that like girls shouldn't go to barbershops. I think that's crap. I think that if you have a short haircut and it falls inside the lines of what a barber is capable of doing, every girl that has that kind of haircut, go to a freaking barbershop, dude. It's the best thing in the world. And I would love to see barbershop clientele grow more and more with women. I think that would be awesome. But yeah, it's incredible. It's an experience. And so when I started doing that, I started learning about all these different products, these kind of more like DIY products that were maybe widely popular, but not necessarily household names. Products like Lay Right and Uppercut and Suavecito and, these brands. And I was like, man, these are so great. Like, this is like such a step up from what I have been using. And, so I was like, I would do my hair with one product and I'd be like, I love this and this and this about it, but I wish it had a little more of this. And then I would do my hair with another product and I'd be like, yeah, I love this and that, but it doesn't have this thing that this other one has. And, I'd be like, I'd use a petroleum-based pomade and I'd be like, I love how much this holds, but I wish it wasn't so hard to wash out, And so I was like, I want to set out to create a hair product that I can use. Like it was never, the starting idea of it was never, I want to make the world's best hair product for everybody. It was like, I want to make a product that I think is perfect for my hair. And so I set out to do it. I went into business with a guy named Jason Hanlon as a business partner. And we hired essentially a scientist to do to tell me exactly what the chemicals were of every pomade that made it up, that made each pomade different, and why it was different and how it was different, and like all these things. And I was like, and we went through 2.5 years of development for this one product, just going back and forth. We had 57 versions, and I was like, man, I really hope that this is not a dead end. Like we had gotten to the point where I was like, I don't know how to make this any better. And finally, this 57th version that came, this final version, I was like, this is it. This holds perfect. This smells perfect. It feels, the consistency of it is perfect. It washes out perfect. Like everything about it is what I've been looking for. I was like, let's make this available to the public. I love how much this works the way that I've always wanted something to work. So let's give it to people and see what they think, So I started producing it, and the first batch, we decided there was a chance that it would be wildly successful. So we decided right off the bat, let's manufacture the right way in like a top-notch lab, and let's do 10,000 units right off the bat. Let's just see what happens. So it's a big risk, but I think that success often comes from swimming out past the buoys and taking big risks, So we did it. So we made 10,000, and within that first year of business, those 10,000 units were gone, and we were on to our next 10,000, and then Tilly's started carrying it, and we had a great relationship with them, and we don't sell through them anymore, though. We now sell through Zoomies nationwide. They have it now, and it's just been really cool. It's been this amazing wild ride. It went from just loving great products, great men's grooming products, to learning about great men's products, and then to making products like that for the public that I really believe in. And now we are officially on to our next formula, which is a matte pomade. It's for people that want to have a product to style the hair, but they want it to finish off with a more natural finish without any shine to it, and without less of a firm hold. So we are on to that, and I think that I'll be dropping that in the next couple months here. I've actually behind the scenes been working on that for the past about year and a half. So, yeah, it's been crazy, but in business for a little over 2.5 years now. And it's been great. It's been awesome.
That's amazing, man. And it's so cool to see, some of the greatest things that have been created are so simple, and it's things that you had, but you needed it better. This is something I think I need, and I think people need, so I'm just going to make it. It's amazing. I love the process.
Totally. Yeah. And I didn't have any intention of reinventing the wheel. Like, I'm not trying to say that, ditch every other product in the world. There's a lot of great products out there, and you might find something that you like that works a little differently and works better for you or whatever. But, I wanted to make something for me that I knew was the best possible product for me, and it ended up being the best possible product for thousands of people all over the world that use it now, and it's just been a really cool thing to watch.
And don't forget, guys, you can definitely go pick that up at Zoomies. I've seen it in person. It's kind of amazing, and you obviously have the moment of like, oh my God, that's my product in a store. Like, how did that feel? Like, when they started like carrying that, when Tilly started with you guys, like, how did that feel?
Dude, it's crazy, and I mean, the goal for the product, for me is for it to get to the point where people don't even know that I'm the one that started it or that I own it. Like, that people just love the product so much that that's their product, and there's no attachment to the fact that this is Matty Mullins' product or whatever. And so it's cool. I went in when we first got retail with Tilly's. Actually, I walked into one and I was asking the salesperson about it if they could tell me a little bit about it, and it was just like, it was fun. It was a fun thing to do. And then I told them, I was like, that's actually my my hair product company, and they were like, ha, yeah, right, kid, like, whatever, and I was like, no, it actually is, and it was crazy, but it's still amazing just to think about it at all these different locations, that it's so accessible at all these different malls to anybody that walks in there, Matty Mullins, Memphis May Fire fan or not, someone who has never even heard of us that can walk in and say, what's this? And pick it up, and maybe it's their new favorite hair product and they have no idea who I am. And that's the coolest thing to me.
Yeah, I love that you don't feel like you need to make the attachment between, yourself, the band, and the product. And I admire that a lot. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and it's my favorite thing to ask everybody. What is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started all of this?
Everything. Everything. No, in regards to music, it would be you don't just get one shot. It's not like that. It's not like 8 Mile, like the movie. You know what I mean? It's like don't feel like if something good is coming your way, don't feel like you don't have the ability to take a step back and observe it from a distance and say, is this really what's best for me and best for my career? If you get your first record deal, take it, observe it, look at it, take it to a lawyer, then go to another label and say, this is what this label's offering me. How can you beat it? Don't jump right into anything without knowing exactly what you're getting into, And on the business side, just be careful. Just be careful about, who you go into business with and how you operate your business. If you want to be known as a great product, a great brand, then offer great customer service. People don't know this, but on a daily basis, I personally am packaging On Pointe Pomade orders and taking them to the post office and handling customer service issues from a different email address, and I love being hands-on with this product and with this business because I love knowing that the customer service that we're offering is second to none, and sometimes you have to do everything yourself if you want it done right. And there's a flip side to that. Don't be afraid to delegate things. Don't get so in over your head to where you can't run the business anymore because there's too much going on. Find people that you do trust, to delegate tasks to and people that you can hire to do things the right way. But don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. If you want to be successful, don't be afraid to be the person that learns everything that has to be known and that finds out how to make things better, not just the product, but the customer service and the way that you interact with customers and anything and everything you can do to be in control of making sure that you're offering the best possible product and service.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Matty. Do you have any final thoughts, words, feelings, and let the people know where they can find you and your stuff?
Oh, man. My last thoughts, feelings. Most of all, Kay, I'm just freaking proud of you. I think you're awesome. I think you're doing a lot of really awesome stuff. It's an honor to have gotten to know you this last summer, and I can't wait to watch you blossom into a beautiful flower that dominates the world because you're awesome and you're going to do that. And I also, as far as finding me, I'm on social media and my name's just what it is, Matty Mullins, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. You can find me there. And if you really care about what I'm doing, you can check up every now and again.
All right. Thank you so much, Matty. I loved having you on this podcast, and I hope that we can reconnect in about maybe a year and see how both of us are doing and where we're at in our careers. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, please go let Matty know. You can find him at Matty Mullins, just about on everything. And check out Memphis May Fire. If you don't have any product for your hair, go to onpointepomade.com. Pre-order you some matte pomade. Get some of your original, red, beautiful, smelling good pomade. Use Project Freelance to get 15% off of your order. Cool. All right, guys. I will talk to you next week. You have no idea. The guests that are going to be on this season, just make sure you subscribe to the podcast and tell all of your friends and family and grandparents and your pets, especially your pets. Make sure they know that there's a new podcast coming out every Sunday. If you want to know more about this podcast, the show notes are available at kanagoniaphotography.com/project freelance, along with every week's episode's show notes. I will talk to you guys next week. You can find me at Kaonagonia Photography. And down below in the comments, would you guys do me a favor and drop your band name and link if you are in a band or if you have your own product? I would like to know more about you and the listeners that listen to this podcast because, hey, maybe I'll get you on this podcast. All right, guys, I'll talk to you soon.